so good.
Yeah, that's the best I've ever heard.
What she looks like? It's my pleasure to introduce Tamara. She's very stripy. She's actually very colourful, lovely person who's been doing lots of good work in her community as well. We've really met online and at BNI, and we've just made some really good connections through that. And so that's just a thing about reaching out and connecting and finding people that might not be in the normal circles, because I think that's another thing, isn't it, quietly, that we have our safe circles and that we don't like that we think, oh yeah, I know lots of people, I network with lots of people. Do you, or are you just moving in the same circles, right? So it was super nice to meet and connect with Tamara. So I'm going to hand over to you, Tamara, and
Thank you.
because you are on the other system, you won't need Wi-Fi.
Awesome.
Landline and caller. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Awesome. Cool. Do I, in terms of changing
You'd like to
should I
click
just
the right?
click them on? Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
Working is optional.
Is it equal?
Or you can just push the button.
Yeah. It also looks like the battery might be low.
Yeah.
Well, kia ora everybody. Ko waio, ko ingarangi me hurai te whakapaparanga mai, ko tangata tiriti aho, ko pukitapu te whenua tupu, ko mātaua Māui te kāinga, kei te whanganui ātara o I noho ana. He hiamana o I inspiring stories me kai whakahaere o I Bloom HQ. Ko Tamara Buckland toka ingoa tēnā koutou. Thank you. I'm Tamara and I am the CEO of Bloom HQ, founder of Bloom HQ, and in my PPH there I just mentioned that I come from English and Jewish descent, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because actually I was at a conference this week where I had a keynote where I talked about my Jewish ancestry in the midst of everything that's happening in Israel, Gaza and Durum. So I'm coming off the back of quite an emotional week, having to process how to deliver a keynote to 1,200 young people about my ancestry and the discomfort of that. So I'm coming in a little bit raw and a little bit fresh today, so I might have some spicy takes on things. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Good. I also come from the beautiful Hawke's Bay. I am a country kid, and so I think a lot of like the ways in which I look at the world, including well-being, is very like practical, maybe something like that, you know, like relatable to like country people. Country people seems a bit weird. Rural people, that's better. Thank you. So I don't know what my next slide is. Oh yeah, kia ora, hi. I run Bloom HQ, which is an HR consultancy, and we do basically our work is to try and help make workplaces less shit, is how I describe it. Part of that is that we do quite a bit of work in the wellbeing space for organisations, and increasingly, I think this is my first little spicy take, increasingly I'm finding talking about wellbeing or doing wellbeing work to be quite draining. And the reason for that is because it's been so overused in a way that's just like, for me, every time I think about well-being, I almost have this internal groan because it feels like it's all talk and no action, and that's not necessarily on the individuals, but I think that's part of a wider system. And I also think it's really difficult to talk about well-being without also talking about why our workplaces are set up for us to be pretty unwell. So I don't like this idea of us talking about individual well-being when we work in systems. For a lot of us, work in systems that actually take that agency away from us, so we're sort of always fighting. However, I am also a big fan of us prioritising ourselves and looking after ourselves and doing that to the best of our ability. And my job as an HR consultant is to try and dismantle the systems and try and challenge the employers to look at the workplace conditions that then undermine our well-being. So we can leave that up to people whose job it is to challenge those employers, and in the meantime we can still do the work on looking after ourselves. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and yeah, it's a really cool thing. I love talking about this stuff in the context with all of you, and especially with women. Now, just as a little side note, I actually have recently come out as non-binary. So I use they, she pronouns, but so I'm still finding it interesting to relate to other women when I've sort of started on that journey myself. But I've been socialised as a woman. I understand the context that we come from in terms of how much more difficult it is for us to prioritise our well-being. So, this is a little bit of an interactive session. I'm just going to ask you some questions, then we're going to do some stuff as well. So, why is well-being important? Has anyone got some really interesting answers for me?
Stay alive.
Yeah, staying alive. Yeah, truly. Yep. And it's very core. Yeah, totally. Yep. What was that?
Your mental state.
Yeah.
Well, it affects
Yeah.
everything.
Yep, totally.
Well, from an organisational point of view, it's about performance at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It helps everyone perform.
To tap into creativity.
To tap into creativity. Yeah, absolutely. What else is
It's really difficult to be efficient and productive if you're feeling shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you don't kill other people as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it reduces crime. Yeah. Did you say jail is overrated?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And there's so many more reasons. And if you have a little think about what's important in your life, you'll come up with the reasons that are really important to you. Some of us may need to be held back from committing crimes all the time. That might be your need to look at our well-being. But there'll be something in that mix of why it's important that resonates with you, and that's the sort of, I guess, the anchor we can have when we think about our well-being, to come back to why it's important. We know, right, cognitively why this is important, but how do we relate to it in a way that gets it right in here, so that when we lose track we can come back, and that's one of the challenges we have, right? Which brings me on to my next point. What gets in the way of us prioritising our well-being? Who really feels like they've got their well-being like totally nailed? Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, we're going to be learning from you. Because it ain't me. Yeah, okay, cool. What gets in the, what does get in the way though? Like what stops us from being able to prioritise it? Work, yes, time. Mindset.
Commitments.
Yeah.
Prioritising others before yourself.
Prioritising others before yourself, yeah. Who does that? Yeah. Why can I ask a slightly maybe sexist question? Do men do that?
Less.
So yeah. Less so, yeah. Right. We can make that generalisation maybe, yeah. Why do you think women do it more often?
Because that's how we socialise to
Yeah,
do
totally.
insurance.
Yeah.
We're conditioned to think we do insurance.
Totally. And there's nothing wrong with looking after others, right? But there's that classic thing that they say on the aeroplane, put your oxygen mask on before you help others. And even though we know that, we still don't do that. So why don't we do that? Why do we prioritise others over ourselves? To the point that we then get burnt out.
Guilt, I think. Guilt often.
Guilt, yeah, hard out.
Do you think
Save
it's
your
because
face.
we want to be seen to be
Yeah.
that nice person that does that thing for others? Like, it's, my husband always says to me, why do you care what other people think? And I don't even subconsciously do that, but I want to be seen to be doing the nice thing for the other person.
Yep.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He don't care what people think.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
I want people to like me.
You want people to like you, yeah. Can I ask a question? Would people like you less if you took time to look after yourself first before looking after them? Would they even,
They could see it.
but yeah, right.
It's an internal conversation.
Yeah.
It's an internal, 100%, and that's just it's almost like a looped little mindset that we have where it's like, okay, I'm going to go and do this thing for me. Oh no, someone needs me over here. I better go over here and do this thing, and I'll get to my thing later. Yeah.
I also think like we're surrounded by social conditioning that supports those theories.
Yeah.
Like we're surrounded by a dominance of women in nursing and teaching. So we've got these caregiving roles. We've got women who stay home on what used to be maternity leave instead of parental leave. So even just those language mindsets.
Totally.
That you know, when you're a little girl, Jules, maybe someone said, "Oh, people will like you if you give them a
You'll make a lovely wife. But I also think if you're in a relationship with a male as a partner, you're kind of got to keep the bus on the road. And,
Yeah,
you know,
you have to set the boundaries.
And you know what? You can tell him 4,000 times. You can show him 4,000 times.
Well, you can
But
divorce them.
you know what? It always comes down to you to just keep the bus on the road.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, that's true. I've got something about that shortly. Yeah, we've got some more hands up.
Yeah, I wonder if harmony is part of a lot of women's well-being.
Yep.
Harmony.
Yeah.
Keeping the
I
pace.
think harmony is an essential part of what well-being is about, isn't it? It's harmony with your environment, harmony in your relationships.
For women,
Yeah.
it
Well, I
might
think
be.
for women
Could be.
potentially it is
Yeah.
it's more important. It's more of a
Okay.
value.
Do you
and
mean
that's why-
keeping the pace kind
Yeah.
of thing around? Yeah. that's-
So
Oh, I
for
see
me
what
to
you mean,
feel
yeah.
well and do my well-being, it's very difficult to do that in a conflicted environment.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yes.
I've just got a couple of things, because I think part of I've got a particular client in mind as we go through this, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to come today. And I think sometimes it's really on people's part as a lack of self-worth, and the only value that they feel they can contribute is productivity, efficiency, high performance.
Yep.
And it's at the cost of their own well-being.
Yep.
And I'm struggling with somebody at the moment to try and switch that around for her, and I'm really listening with very keen ears to see what we're going to talk about today, because I think it'll be really helpful. So there is that, and I think the other comment about males is, like my husband, for example, is a really hard grafter. He's got a stressful, demanding job, and he still pulls his weight at home. But what he doesn't have is the mental load of the household that I carry.
Yep.
And he doesn't understand why that impacts my well-being, because he doesn't have that at home. Like he has that at work, and he can leave work at work, but I can't. So I think for women who are actually in traditional relationships, who are running the household and looking after the kids, that is a huge eroder of our well-being, because we've always got something in our head.
Yep.
He can come home, play with the kids and just relax, whereas I'm thinking of the next thing that needs to be done.
Yeah,
I'm so
totally.
envious of his ability to focus on fun.
Totally.
I'm just like, why can't I do that? I really want to be able to just do that. So there's a bit of a gender shift, or maybe a work mindset shift in terms of the household.
Totally.
Not
Yep.
necessarily that they're lazy, but it's different.
We've got a few. Yeah.
I guess I'm sitting here thinking that it's a narrative that we tell ourselves, though, that nobody made us take that role, and it's something that we have to feel, like you say, useful and important and all of that. And I had a situation where my husband worked part-time, and I said right from the beginning of having babies, I'm not having a full-time job with babies. I don't want 2 full-time jobs, because he was working a lot. So when it came back, then he took over those things, and he's way better at it than me. And it wasn't easy. It really wasn't. Like, so if he's cooking and I'm sitting on the couch, that is so hard. Okay, that was so hard. I'm so over it now. But I do think that is something that we have put ourselves in, and we keep feeding the narrative. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit of some of the things that I'm hearing in here, which is that there's an element of discomfort that we have to get used to when we change things. And I think whenever I have this talk with folks and we talk about like what are we actually going to go and do after this, like to prioritise our well-being, when we have more time, we start to unpack a little bit more of this stuff, because this is the bit that gets in the way. We talk about it, we talk about it, we talk about it, then we don't do the thing, right? And that's because there's a bunch of reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is because we know that a shift in our behaviour, especially in a traditional house, in a household where it feels like we can't shift that so easily, we're going to have to figure out how do we sit in discomfort as we put more boundaries in place and as we advocate for our needs, because it is not going to feel good. And I think one of the things is we want to feel good most of the time, right? Like that's how humans kind of want to be. We want harmony, we don't want discomfort, and then that way, that's why we stay in our patterns, right? We're only going to break through our patterns if we know, okay, if I'm going to prioritise me, this is going to feel quite deeply uncomfortable for a while until we get used to it, right? And that's a new change. It's that bit that we need to kind of figure out. What's going to help support me to sit on the couch while someone else does the cooking? How am I going to sit there and get through that moment? Do I need to distract myself? What do I need to do to build a habit there? I'll take a couple more, let's do a couple more and then we better move forward.
I'm coming from a slightly different point of view. Hetero long-term relationship but no kids. And I always fought against the model, decided I wasn't going to be a mother when I was 5, always fought against all of that set of expectations that I would have a partner, not a husband, you know. And he's been very good about it, but it's like still in the back of your head. And like one of the things I've really noticed, and what I really fought against, was when all my friends were having kids at that sort of age group, it was like they were so totally in control of the house, even if they were working. And then if the man wanted to help, or the man wanted to take control of parts of that, they resisted it.
Yes.
And that made some sense when the kids are really small, because I mean, somebody has to be in charge, you need a boss. But when the kids are like 17, 18, it doesn't really matter who cooks dinner. It doesn't, and in fact it should be shared at that point, because there's a bunch of adults living in the house. And yet people I can see the roles got stuck. At the small child stage, it never evolved into an older. Yeah, I don't think you see it.
So I think, you know, as we sit here with different circumstances, I think as we go through this time, I would encourage you to think a little bit about what are your barriers, your personal barriers to getting these things done, and sit with that. Not right now, because that could be quite long and awkward. But to sit with that and really go into like what's the feelings that are coming up for me when I think about taking a step back and letting someone else take control of something so I can go and have a nice long bath or do something else that without guilt, without too much guilt. What's coming up in my body? Like, is that feeling like, oh, am I feeling really nervous about that? Okay, how am I going to deal with that feeling so I can get through and do the thing that I want to do, right? And if we don't acknowledge those feelings and we just try and push through them, or we try to pretend they don't exist, then we're going to keep coming back to the same behaviour, because that's not going to feel good. But the minute we go like, okay, if I do this, it's going to feel yuck, and I'm expecting that, cool, then we can plan for it, yeah?
That's good.
Awesome. Right, what happens if we don't prioritise our well-being? I feel like we know the answer to this. We burn out? Burn out, right?
Yep.
Has anyone been burned out?
Been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And burnout has quite a big consequence, and I think when people say burnout, there's different definitions of that, right? But I know that for me, over summer, I burnt out, and I took 2 months off, and as a small business owner, that fundamentally changed our financial landscape. We went from being a very profitable business to now losing money because I took that time off. Now that's not going to be the case for every single business, right? But there was a real reliance on me, and so now I'm playing catch up from that, right? And it's still ongoing. I'm still recovering from burnout. It might take me years, I don't know. But I think the point there is that I knew what I had to sit with in early December last year was, if I don't stop now, I will lose my business. I know that I will completely break down. So I had to sit in that discomfort of knowing that if I took 2 months off work, there would be consequences, but the consequences if I didn't would be much greater. And I think we just don't want to get to that point, right? Those decisions are really hard. It's much easier to make a decision way earlier in the journey there, right? To say, okay, I'm going to prioritise having a regular coffee with a friend of mine on a Friday or whatever, and that's like a big part of my wellbeing practice, and nothing's going to get in the way of that. If we can prioritise that, then that's a less hard decision, right? So there's lots of consequences if we don't prioritise our wellbeing, and we know that. So let's talk about our own definition of wellbeing. This is where we're going to get a little bit more interactive, and I'm just thinking, what time do I need to be finished by?
Can't remember.
It's only 2 minutes past 2:30.
Yeah,
So we've got some-
it's between 20 past and 10:30. So
Excellent.
we've got 20 minutes, half an hour.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
In that case, what I'll do is I'll get you to show me some of these decks. Yeah, thank you. So these decks of cards are, I designed these, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. You might just share one between two, but those of you who by yourself, you can. Oh, you can share. I think we'll have a laugh. Awesome. Now, I'm really sorry that you can't keep these because I'm not that some more if anyone wants their own one. Go on. Alright, share. Okay, I'll just keep this one. Right. So, tiny backstory. This deck of cards was created when I got bullied. After I got bullied at a place in town, a technology company, got massively bullied by the HR manager. How ironic's that? Mind you, actually, being in HR, I know that HR managers are often the bullies. So, you know, that makes sense. And I had to take a significant amount of time off work because of that. So it was like burnout, depression. And I created this deck at a time when how my depression was manifesting was that I wasn't able to talk very well, articulate myself, so I started writing down things that would help me with my well-being on post-it notes, and then I'd hand that to my partner who then helped make that happen. And so this deck of cards, and you'll see how that's transpired in a minute, helped me basically through a time of depression for myself, and then we developed into a game. So this part is all about creating our own definition of well-being. Now, the reason why that's important is because we often think, well-being, in our workplaces, often our HR managers, our CEOs, whoever it is, comes up with a grand plan for how well-being should look. And often it's like they'll just kind of go, oh yeah, let's do some yoga on a Friday, let's put some fresh fruit in the kitchen, and let's do like this random thing or whatever it is. But I think what hasn't been recognised in any of that is that everybody is different. So there's a way in which, so the reason why this card deck was developed in this way was to empower everybody to understand their own well-being needs. And then my job is to help bubble up those individual needs into strategic well-being planning, which is what I do for a job. So we help look at what everybody in the organisation wants and needs, find the threads, create a strategy that's going to actually work for the people. So, the first part of this, it's a really simple game. I'm going to ask you to open your decks of cards and find, I mean, we can just do it on here, but it's just like, it's nice to feel the thing. There's a bunch of cards, these blue ones, with feelings words written on them.
Oh yeah.
Oh, great. That's your under pressure now. We're trying them on the floor.
Have you been flown? Cold.
Not quite.
So, my ask is for each of you to go through this and find 5-ish cards that best represent the question, the answer to the question, when I'm thriving, I feel. When I'm thriving, I feel. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to sort through. It's hard to do in pairs sometimes. About 5. Yeah. When I'm thriving, I feel. And if you're in a pair and it's getting too awkward to share cards, this is the full deck of cards up here on the screen anyway. Might be hard to see though.
15.
I always start with a long list and then start shortening it down because there's lots of synonyms in there. Once you find your 5, I'd take a photo of them, just so you've got that information for later, or write them down in a notebook or something. This is going to be diabolical to watch back later, by the way. Anyway, that's okay. I love the creative use of laps and chairs.
Really not wearing a skirt.
I've always struggled with the word well-being because to me that says candles, baths, yoga, relaxing, which
That's
to
your
me it
definition.
gives me into anxiety. It's an active relaxer. It's just like that. It's just my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just that I just don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand.
Yeah, yeah.